At 4:37 a.m. on September 10th, a massive underwater blast tore through the seabed. In a move worth $425 million, the U.S. Navy sent a powerful signal into international waters just 20 nautical miles off Venezuela's coast. This was not a training exercise. It was the first clear warning in a confrontation designed to leave a lasting impression on Caracas. A major U.S. naval force was moving toward the Venezuelan coastline. Two guided missile destroyers, the USS Jason Dunham and the USS Gravely, advanced toward international waters south of Venezuela, roughly 230 miles from Caracas. At the same time, F-35A Lightning II fighter jets launched from Roosevelt Roads Air Base in Puerto Rico, cutting through dense cloud cover at speeds up to Mach 1.6 as they headed southwest to establish a combat air patrol over international airspace near the Venezuelan coast. And that was only part of the picture. The USS Jason Dunham had already taken up a key battle position. Inside the Combat Information Center, the red glow of the consoles lit up the tense faces of the crew. Before the towering spray from the first impact had even faded, a second bright flash burst from the Mark 41 vertical launch system. Another Tomahawk missile, carrying a 990-pound payload, surged into the sky. It carved a second trail of fire overhead, following almost the exact path of the first just moments later. Flying low over the water at 547 miles per hour, the missile rushed toward coordinates still shaking from the earlier impact. The sea split again, as if cut open by an invisible blade. It was a cold, unmistakable message to the government in Caracas after what the U.S. described as dangerous provocation on September 4th, when two Venezuelan F-16s aggressively approached American forces involved in anti-drug trafficking operations. That time, the U.S. Navy chose restraint. This time, the tone was very different. Like a patient predator holding position, the USS Jason Dunham remained off Venezuela's coast, its Aegis radar sweeping the region with constant precision. Nearby, the USS Gravely kept formation, its Mark 41 launch system standing by, ready for immediate orders. Both ships moved slowly, maintaining a firm defensive posture while waiting for what might come next. Farther east, hundreds of miles away, an amphibious ready group led by the USS Bataan had secured a support zone. From its deck, MV-22 Osprey aircraft lifted off and circled overhead, building a wide surveillance and reconnaissance network across the area. The objective of the U.S. Navy was clear: deliver a direct warning to Caracas. Everything was in place. One serious misstep, and images from inside Venezuela could dominate news coverage around the world. The next move now depended on Nicolas Maduro. Would he allow the country to remain at peace, or would he push the Caribbean toward open confrontation? In Caracas, inside a tense underground bunker, President Maduro slammed his hand down on the table, his face burning with anger as he urgently called together the National Defense Council. Despite the growing panic, the generals moved quickly, rushing elite units into position. T-72 main battle tanks rolled along the coast near La Guaira, while a squadron of Su-30 MKV fighter jets thundered into the sky from an air base, prepared for a direct showdown. More than 20 minutes after the second Tomahawk launch, a signal lit up the radar screens aboard the USS Jason Dunham like a flash in the Caribbean night. It was the start of a tense and unforgiving standoff. The SPY-1 system had locked onto a group of Venezuelan aircraft racing out from an inland airbase, roughly 172 miles west of the coastline. The Su-30 MKVs, powerful Russian-built fighters capable of speeds up to Mach 2.0 and carrying a heavy weapons load, were now pushing into international airspace. Flying low along the coastline to reduce their radar visibility, they used the terrain to their advantage. Then, with engines roaring, they climbed to 30,000 feet, clearly aiming to challenge the US F-35A patrol overhead. But the US side showed no hesitation. From a position about 345 miles from Puerto Rico, the F-35A formation was cleared into action. Accelerating to Mach 1.6, the jets moved toward the contested zone. They did not rush in blindly. Instead, they relied on a first-look, first-shot approach. Their advanced APG-81 sensors detected the Su-30S from 115 miles away, long before the Venezuelan pilots could establish a proper lock. That was the true edge of sensor fusion. Radar, infrared tracking, distributed aperture data, and electronic surveillance were combined in real time, giving F-35 pilots a full picture of the battle space, without needing to fully expose themselves on enemy radar. It allowed them to stay aware while remaining difficult to detect. As the pressure built in the sky, the confrontation expanded at sea. A Venezuelan frigate armed with Exocet anti-ship missiles moved out from port and increased speed, holding its position at a distance. It did not fire, but its presence alone sent a clear message. Venezuela was prepared to stand its ground. The USS Jason Dunham responded instantly. Its Aegis combat system came alive like a steel shield, while the SPY-1D radar tracked every movement with relentless precision. Nothing in the area went unnoticed. At the same time, the air encounter grew even more tense. The Su-30s tried to gain an edge by flying in wide arcs, releasing flares and using electronic interference. The F-35s answered with electronic warfare of their own, weakening the effectiveness of the opposing radar. At one point, a Venezuelan fighter appeared ready to take the next step, but the F-35 reacted immediately, changing speed and position while locking on in return. No one crossed the final line, but for 10 minutes, the sky became a silent contest between stealth, speed, and nerve. Farther away, roughly 287 miles from the Dominican Republic, the USS Bataan strengthened the U.S. posture by launching additional aircraft. 6 MV-22 Osprey helicopters lifted off from its deck, flying low to stay beneath radar coverage as they expanded a wide surveillance perimeter around the main fleet. The standoff reached its most dangerous moment when one Su-30 moved in closer than before. But the USS Gravely had already prepared for that possibility. Its Aegis system had positioned SM-2 interceptors on standby in case the situation crossed into open hostility. Above them, the F-35s used their stealth advantage to move into a superior position behind the Su-30S. Ready to respond the instant Venezuela made the first move. The Su-30S were eventually forced to pull back, their radar systems disrupted, and their combat effectiveness sharply reduced. The U.S. Navy had made one thing unmistakably clear. It held the advantage in both technology and control, turning every challenge into a chance to display its superiority. But Caracas was not ready to back down. A fresh radar contact revealed more Venezuelan patrol boats moving in, pushing the confrontation even closer to the edge, where a single mistake could turn a tense standoff into a full-scale conflict. At 5:47 a.m., the Caribbean sky had started to fade into gray. Roughly 230 miles off the Venezuelan coast, the USS Jason Dunham and USS Gravely remained in position like steel strongholds, their SPY-1 radars sweeping the region with relentless accuracy. Yet some of America's most dangerous power was hidden far below the surface. At a depth of 600 feet, around 34.5 miles from La Guaira port, the USS Newport News moved silently through the dark water like a hunter. Armed with Mark 48 AD-cap torpedoes, the submarine had been tracking Venezuelan naval activity from the very beginning. Its sonar system released a powerful acoustic pulse, strong enough to disrupt and temporarily disable the underwater sensors of a Venezuelan patrol boat that had just appeared on radar 28.7 miles away. There was no blast, no wreckage, no visible strike, but the invisible shock ran through the vessel, rattling the crew and spreading panic on board. Inside the bunker in Caracas, the atmosphere had become suffocating. Faces were tense, exhausted, and grim. Along the coast near La Guaira, the highest state of alert was declared. Venezuelan warships increased speed, preparing their Exocet MM-40 missiles, while additional F-16, Block 15, and Su-30 fighter jets continued to deploy from air bases, armed and ready to challenge the American F-35s in the next phase of the standoff. On land, national television showed armored vehicles and amphibious combat machines moving along the coastline, linking up with coastal defense artillery in preparation for any possible landing attempt. Every new move suggested the situation was becoming more dangerous by the minute. Then the tension rose again. A Venezuelan patrol boat suddenly accelerated, appearing to test how far it could press the U.S. fleet. The Spy-1 radar aboard the USS Jason Dunham locked onto it immediately. At the same time, an F-35A descending from 40,000 feet used its advanced sensors to pick up the heat signature of the vessel's engines from 34.5 miles away. Nearby, the USS Gravely brought its Aegis system to full readiness, with SM-2 missiles standing by inside the Mark 41 launch tubes, waiting only for the order. Venezuela answered with another show of force, sending 2 more F-16S in low over the area while releasing flares and using electronic interference. The most dangerous moment came at 6:11 a.m. when the USS Newport News continued tracking the same patrol boat. This time, it released a more intense acoustic pulse, directly overwhelming the vessel's sonar system and effectively blinding it beneath the surface. At nearly the same moment, a Tomahawk missile launched from another position, flying low before striking a coastal radar tower just 2.3 miles from shore. A column of black smoke rose into the air, underscoring how precisely the U.S. could hit critical targets without moving into direct close-range engagement. Venezuelan radar coverage fell into confusion, and still, the crisis was not over. radar aboard the USS Bataan detected 3 more Venezuelan patrol boats moving in at speed, reportedly carrying additional anti-ship missiles. The Venezuelan Air Force sent up 2 more Su-30 fighters, ready to enter the confrontation. In Caracas, fresh broadcast footage showed armed militia units gathering along the coastline, prepared for a fight. By that point, both sides were balanced on the brink. One small miscalculation, one rash move, one wrong signal, and the entire standoff could spill over into open war. Peace was still there, but only by a thread. Looking at the mounting tension, one thing becomes obvious. The U.S. Navy, through discipline, planning, and advanced technology, has positioned itself as a force that cannot be easily shaken. From the destroyers USS Jason Dunham and USS Gravely with their highly capable Aegis systems, to the stealthy F-35As controlling the airspace above, and the USS Newport News operating silently beneath the surface, every movement sends a clear message of confidence and control. On the other side, Venezuela, under Nicolas Maduro, appears to be entering a confrontation from a position of weakness. Its Su-30s and F-16s may look threatening on paper, but their actions feel more desperate than effective. Instead of creating leverage, they seem to be boxing themselves in, overestimating their strength while provoking an opponent with far greater reach and coordination. But the situation does not end there. The next phase could unfold in several ways, and each possibility carries serious consequences. What remains clear, however, is that the U.S. Navy, with its careful preparation and next-generation systems, would likely remain in control of the tempo. If Maduro were to impulsively order Su-30 and F-16 squadrons to carry out a test strike near the F-35 patrol zone, the Venezuelan aircraft would likely try to stay low and use the terrain for cover. Even so, the F-35s, with their stealth profile and powerful sensor fusion, would detect them long before they could get close. The result would most likely be a short, tense chase, ending with the Venezuelan aircraft forced to turn back after being completely outpositioned. In the end, Maduro would lose credibility while the U.S. would reinforce its dominance in the air. In another scenario, if Venezuelan patrol boats attempted a risky missile provocation against the American fleet, the response would likely be immediate. The Aegis systems aboard the USS Gravely and USS Jason Dunham would track the threat at once, while interceptor missiles would stand ready to neutralize it before it could change the balance. Such a move would only expose Venezuela's vulnerability even more clearly on the international stage. If Maduro chose to increase pressure by mobilizing coastal defense forces, the USS Newport News would remain a major factor in the equation. Operating quietly hundreds of feet below the surface, the submarine could continue to provide electronic disruption and precision strike capability against strategic coastal infrastructure. That alone would serve as a powerful warning, showing that the U.S. could respond from directions Venezuela might never fully anticipate. All of these possible outcomes point to the same conclusion. The U.S. Navy, through professionalism, coordination, and superior technology, would remain in the stronger position. Venezuela may continue to project defiance, but with every misstep, it risks pushing itself deeper into a crisis it may not be able to control. For now, the world can only watch and wait. Because in moments like this, real power is not measured by speeches or dramatic gestures, but by preparation, restraint, and the ability to act with overwhelming precision.